Chapter 5. Cara's eyelids fluttered as Traylon came up behind her and pressed a hot, possessive kiss to her neck. A low laugh escaped her as she turned in his arms and wrapped hers around his neck. She returned his heated kiss with one of her own. "Amber and Jade are finally asleep," he murmured against her skin. "You know what that means, don't you?" Cara pulled back enough to look into his eyes. Her fingers played with his hair. It was starting to grow long again, now that it wasn't getting torched or chewed on as much anymore. "You pass out from exhaustion?" she asked in a teasing tone. "They were especially active after dinner tonight." Traylon emitted a low growl and scooped Cara up against him. "I'm getting better at living with little to no sleep," he stated proudly. "No. It is time I took my mate out for an evening flight." "The girls?" Cara asked with a raised eyebrow. "Simba will be here. My symbiote will not allow them to get hurt or escape without it," Traylon whispered, as he pulled her away from the twins' bedroom and down the hallway to the living room. "Don't you want to fly?" "You know I do," Cara breathed, as she ran her fingers down his chest as he walked slowly backwards. "Last one to the meadow gets the bottom." A low, dangerous growl escaped Traylon as Cara darted past him. He watched her shapely ass as she ran through the living room and out onto the balcony. His dragon snarled as she shifted when she reached the railing. The beautiful colors of her tiny burgundy and amethyst dragon called to him. She flashed her emerald green eyes at him in challenge and invitation before she launched herself into the air. "She is incredible," Traylon murmured to his dragon as he swept through the balcony doors after his mate. "My mate!" his dragon roared as he took control. Within a fraction of a second, the body of the large male dragon pushed off the stone railing after Cara. His black scales shimmered in the brightness of the full twin moons. Dark, bluish-tinted scales, with traces of gold mixed through them, caught and held the glow of the moon for just a moment. His large wings swept up and down in powerful strokes as he raced to catch up with the small dragon. "She no want the damp grass," his dragon informed him. "I always did like being on the bottom," Traylon replied with a grin. "It makes it easier to see her face as she comes." "And go deep," his dragon added, as he glided under the branch of a thick tree as they neared the long meadow not far from the palace. Traylon did a second sweep around the meadow to make sure it was safe before he landed a few feet away from where Cara stood. Both he and his dragon were held mesmerized by the beauty of her as she stood frozen in the center of the long grassy area. A light breeze blew the tall purple grass, making it appear as if it was dancing around a statue. He studied her for a moment, just appreciating how beautiful she was in her dragon form, as well as her two-legged figure. Her delicate head was turned toward the moons. Her long, slender neck was exposed, and her wings were raised outward, as if she wanted to feel the cool evening air brush across them. Her tail was wound protectively near her left back leg. Her right forearm was raised, as if she tried to reach out and touch the dancing waves of light flickering on the blades of the tall grass. "You are truly magnificent," Traylon whispered to her, as he took slow, sure steps toward her. Cara's head lowered, and she gazed back at him with glowing emerald eyes. She emitted a low, soft cough in invitation. Her tail unwound, and she seductively swished it back and forth. "Oh, Mia Lila, I love you," Traylon murmured as he approached her. Cara followed him as he slowly circled her. His tail ran down along her right hip before he flicked the end against her hindquarter. She turned and snapped at him to let him know that she felt his possessive slap. He snapped back with a low rumble. Cara cursed her dragon for arching her neck to the male. She wanted to roll her eyes at the horny bitch. She could at least give her male a run for his money. A surprised giggle escaped Cara when her dragon smacked her tail against the male's hindquarter as he came around the other side. The low hiss told her that he had felt it as well. A shiver of anticipation swept through Cara when the male dragon suddenly rounded on her. Sharp teeth sank into her exposed neck, pulling a loud cry from her that echoed through the meadow. His dragon's fire ignited her blood as he breathed. He gripped her shoulders with his foreclaws and wrapped his wings around her so he could pull her onto his chest as he rolled. The movement settled her snugly on top of him. Cara's tail tangled with his as she steadied herself. A startled hiss escaped her as his cock slid from the protective slit to press against her. She didn't think she would ever get used to that. Pushing her foreclaws against his chest, she arched just enough so that they aligned before she sank back down onto him. The thrill of being held captive by such a powerful dragon flowed through her like lava pouring from a newly erupted volcano. Her claws kneaded his shoulders as he pressed deeper and deeper into her. "Traylon," Cara breathed as he pulled her tighter. He increased each powerful stroke as his own need came to a crest. "Yes! Oh, yes!" Her dragon moaned as the male drove into her over and over. The feel of his long shaft pushing deeper into her heightened her need for release. A sense of loss nearly overwhelmed her when he released her neck. That was, until the first wave of dragon's fire rushed through her. She rotated her hips and pulled tighter on his tail in an effort to relieve the growing burning deep inside her. Turning her slender head, she brushed her tongue along the smooth scales of his jaw and whimpered. He still refused to go faster. Impatient, she nudged him with her snout before she nipped at his ear in frustration. A shudder escaped her when he drove into her as deep as he could and held still. She pulled back and gazed down into his blazing gold eyes. She blinked when he slowly pulled back and did it again. Traylon's dragon was trying to tell her he was the one in control. Deep down, she knew it was the primitive need of the male to dominate. Bowing her head, she brushed her tongue down along his jaw again before she opened her mouth and bit down just under it. "Cara, Mia Lila, you play a dangerous game," Traylon roared out as she released the dragon fire inside her. "Haven't you learned yet that women never fight fair when they really want something?" she whispered as she poured everything in her into him. The loud roar of the male echoed through the meadow as he swelled and exploded deep inside her with a force that took her breath away. Her own body constricted around him, locking him to her as she responded to the cock pulsing inside her. Finally, for just a moment, relief, she thought, as her mind grew hazy with satisfaction. "Round 2 coming up after this commercial break." "You're going to kill me, aren't you?" Traylon groaned, as pleasure and fire overwhelmed him again. "You're late," Zoran growled as Traylon stumbled down the last step. "You would be too if you had to try to tire your mate out enough that she would pass out. Not fall asleep, but pass out," Traylon snapped back as he swayed. "Do you have any idea what it takes to wear Cara out?" Muffled laughter echoed through the lower dungeons. Traylon pushed his hair back out of his eyes. Even that took a monumental amount of energy. He wasn't sure he had any left after the love-making marathon he had just had with his mate. "Do you need a gravity chair?" Haven asked with a grin. "More like a regen bed," Vox laughed, as he came up and slapped Traylon good-naturedly on the shoulder. Traylon stumbled forward and would have fallen if Mandra hadn't caught him. A part of him wished his brother would have just let him fall. The floor was looking very inviting right now. "Are you going to be all right?" Mandra asked him quietly. "We can go on without you if you want to return to your mate." Traylon glared at Mandra as he straightened. He saw the deceptive twinkle in his brother's eyes. He didn't just about kill himself wearing Cara out to give up now. "Let's go," he growled under his breath. I want to see what this Halloween is." None of the men saw the almost 24 shadows, some large, some small, following them as they moved through the door leading down to the cavern below. "Dada," Jade giggled as she burrowed into the soft saddle of her golden horsey.